Hey everyone. Okay, so I'm actually pretty excited about this crazy madness of mnemonics for all of the immunohistochemistry for tumor markers. So I don't get overwhelmed by all of the crap that's on the page here. I'm going to walk through it one at a time. So we're going to start with Vimentin. So Vimentin is over here. Try not to look at all this crap down here. We'll make our way to it. So Vimentin's an intermediate filament, and it's important because it's part of the cytoskeleton structure of mesenchymal cells. So things like endothelial cells and macrophages. So what are we going to see that positive in? So let's zoom in right over here onto this table. And here's how we're going to remember it. So the first thing we have is this violet vase filled with violets, right? So that's going to remind us of that we're dealing with Vimentin. And then we have, then we'll get into which tumors. So over here, we have a remote control. So remember remote control and add an extra C. And that's for renal cell carcinoma. And then at the end of the table over here, we have a bowl of miso soup. So remember that that's for mesothelioma. And also remember that it's at the end of the table. This is a stretch, but that's for endometrial carcinoma. Okay, then over here we have a soccer ball. And the soccer ball is to remind you of sarcoma. And then it says goal right underneath it. And why does it say goal? So it's associated with certain types of cancer, certain types of sarcoma. So for the G, we have GIST, G-I-S-T. Then for the O, we have osteosarcoma. For the A, we have angiosarcoma. And for the L, we have liposarcoma. So just a bunch of sarcomas. It's also associated with chondrosarcoma, which is cartilaginous. So I put this little ACE bandage on there. It's a really cheap memory device, but maybe it'll work. And then we have a clock in the middle of the table, and it says 11:22 on it. So what does an 11:22 translocation signify? That's for Ewing's. So these are all associated with, again, Vimentin. And then I'll just write over here chondrosarcoma. So we can go through this. GIST, Ewing's, chondrosarcoma, osteosarcoma, liposarcoma, angiosarcoma, meningioma, mesothelioma, renal cell carcinoma, and endometrial carcinoma. So those are all the things that are associated with Vimentin. Take a look at this table over here, and hopefully that'll stick. Okay, so now just as a side note, there's another thing that's associated with mesothelioma, another marker for mesothelioma, and that's, wait for it, mesothelin. So that's pretty obvious that's for mesothelioma, but there's a few other things that are associated with mesothelin, and that would be pancreas, esophageal, and gastric. So pancreatic, esophageal, and gastric are also associated with mesothelin. So if you can remember PEG, just think of this PEG going through these lungs over here. So these lungs, which have mesothelioma, so in the pleura they have mesothelioma, so just try to picture that, and then there's a PEG going through it, and again the PEG is for pancreatic, esophageal, and gastric. All right, now let's take a look at Desmin. Desmin is a marker of intermediate filaments in the cytoskeleton of skeletal muscle and smooth muscle. So it has an S, an M, and an I in here. So we can say Desmin is the smooth muscle and skeletal muscle intermediate filament. And you could even do IN, so Desmin. And it's associated with two cancers. This is a mouse right here, right? And the mouse is saying, I'm a rabbit. But that's a lie. So the mouse is saying he's a rabbit for rhabdomyosarcoma. You get it. Okay, and then the lies, like this is clearly not a rabbit, right? It's a mouse. Clearly a mouse. Rabbits don't have red noses. So it says lies. That's for myosarcoma. Okay, you get it. I won't write it all out. Great. So moving on. Cytokeratin. Cytokeratin, just remember it's associated with basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. And if you think about your skin having keratin in it, the cells of your skin have keratin, so cytokeratin. But if you need a little memory hook, here are some sunglasses to protect your sight, right? And you want to protect them from the sun, which is associated with squamous cell and basal cell carcinoma. Moving on. Okay, this one takes a little bit more of like actually sitting down and like writing this out a few times. But you have there's three things that we're going to cover here: neurofilaments, and neurofilaments are part of neurons, and then chromogranin A, which is a secretory granule of neuroendocrine cells, and then synaptophysin is also a secretory granule of neuroendocrine cells. So these two, this is kind of nice, these two, chromogranin A and synaptophysin, have the same three associations, and that's medullary thyroid cancer, neuroendocrine tumors, NETs, and small cell lung cancer. Then we go over here to neurofilaments, and neurofilaments are associated with the blasts. So you can think of like little blasts over here if you want to draw like a little explosion in here. So that's a really bad explosion. It kind of just looks like a flower. But a neuroblastoma and medulloblastoma, in addition to neuroendocrine tumors and small cell lung cancers, are associated with neurofilaments. So this one, you unfortunately just have to go through a few times. All right, this one's my favorite one right here, S100. S100 is it's a marker of neural crest cells. So if you know that it's neural crest cells, you could probably get away with knowing that and answering a question correctly based off of that. But I think that this mnemonic is awesome. So here's a swan, right? And the swan's taking the money. So it says, so long, money. So just remember a schwannoma. And then the long is for Langerhans cell histiocytosis. And it's kind of hard to remember that, but just remember that like this is a really long word, Langerhans cell. I didn't even want to write the whole thing out when I was preparing for this because it's so long. Langerhans cell histiocytosis. So long, money. So S100, these are $100 bills, right? S100. So long, money. S100, money, $100 bill, melanoma, money, melanoma. And if you want to remember that, we'll just put like a little ink stain on the money, right? And it has some irregular borders, and it's colored, and it's rapidly growing, and I don't remember the rest of it. Okay, GFAP. GFAP is an intermediate filament again, and it's part of the cytoskeleton of neuroglial cells. So that would include Schwann cells, astrocytes, oligodendrocytes. But you see that typically as a marker of glioblastoma and astrocytoma. That's all I have for that one. There's nothing else for that. Okay, then coming over here, here is so I felt the need to add shading, I guess. So here's a PSA to your PAP, right? So like your father. So PSA is prostate specific antigen, and then PAP is another marker. I'm trying to remember exactly what it stands for. I think it's prostate alkaline. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but they're both markers of prostate cancer. Another thing to know is if you have more PSA bound, so more bound PSA is a worse prognosis, so it's more likely to be cancer. But anyways, PSA to your PAP, get your prostate checked. So tell your dad to get his prostate checked. Make a PSA to your PAP, get your prostate checked. And yeah, there's like a bunch of debate over like is PSA actually a good marker. Okay, moving down here, TRAP positive would be like so TRAP positive, and that is that stands for tartrate resistant acid phosphatase, and that's associated with hairy cell leukemia. And if you look in this drain, it looks like there's a hair trap, right? So the water can't get down because it's trapped by all the hair. So it's a hairy trap. Just remember, a sink full of hair, the water won't go down. It's a hairy trap. Okay, and then finally, I don't have a mnemonic for this, but this is the only one that I don't really have any mnemonic for. CD45, malignant lymphoma. Remember that. So CD45 is malignant lymphoma. Of course, there's other ones. There's CD20 for B cells and CD3 for T cells, and CD8 and CD4 for T cells, and CD15 and 30 for Reed-Sternberg cells. But I think that this is a pretty good place to start. So here are all the mnemonics. Hopefully this was somewhat helpful, and if it wasn't, then sorry for wasting your time, and get back to studying.